Rosa Parks and the few before her refused to give up their seats to white passengers. Black Americans had no problem backing the idea of their actions, even if some feared the consequences of the law for doing so. The idea of African Americans having the same claim to transit seating as the white person seemed a good idea across the entire black community. So you didn't see any of the African Americans complaining or saying things like, we don't deserve to be up front. Americans, on the contrary, right now it seems at least, see their fellow countrymen refusing to pay taxes or support unjust wars, or even allowing for the further loss of rights to continue, and see nothing but chaotic dissenters, and accuse their methods of choosing not to inflate the power of the state as only being able to lead to disorder. This, to me, is the same as if the African Americans said amongst themselves, we can't decide for ourselves to be able to sit on the front of the bus. Are we such cowards that we cannot make our own way, take our own reins and blaze our own path? Freedom is almost always, if not always, obtained by the oppressed, rising up to overthrow the oppressor, or the state, the governing system, and take what is rightfully owned by the masses. Freedom. No government has ever stood the test of time. They are not designed to do so. They are purposely constructed for the taxation and of this population, of their population, in the efforts of self-growth. Acting under the fallacy that the state is somehow more efficient and moral than the general populace itself, when the truth is that there is no such thing as a state apart from people, and the state is a tool for this very population to exploit itself. It's a method for those who are susceptible to corruption to use to exploit those who are not. So why try and keep in check this beast in the cage when you could just not have to have that fear in the first place? The more any government grows, the more its people are exploited, and the people will, according to history, only tolerate so much of this state's abuse before rebelling. And the more tight the grip becomes from the government, the more struggle there is against this control. In a way, this brings with it a small piece of comfort or solace for me. For the more any administration, including Obi and his ilk, impose their ways of tyranny on the people, like the takeover of private sector constructs, i.e. banks, healthcare, auto industry, or whatever, the more that you see the oppression, the more the oppressive ways become clear. A key difference in this analogy is that the black Americans were going against what could clearly be seen as an inequality issue. It was an obvious humanitarian violation. What we have going on today is more sly, and certainly not clearly seen, not by us anyways, and how could we with such poor media resources? But still, what's going on is a violation of what is supposed to be the free peoples of this country. Today there is the slow building of a fence. The state puts out feed or sport at the cost of one leg of an enclosure being imposed. At first there seems to be no real compromise or loss of freedom, but when many walls have been built and the little piggies come in through the narrow opening left to gain what has to this point seemed to be free goods, there will be there'll be the day when even a small gap will be closed and there will be no escape. Though by this point the livestock is usually trained and they don't even mind, for they are taken care of and accounted for and have learned to depend on their masters. So to overthrow or to be equal to or to even escape are ideas that soon become unfathomable. and to intellectualize our way through this, to drag kicking and screaming the rest of our race into this realization is the only way to make it through this battle, which is, to me, first and foremost. Also, when the black Americans united to end segregation, they did so from an underlying ideology of freedom. They did not just sit around squabbling about the best way to achieve it. They started doing things. They did things that were considered both right and wrong. But every person in the movement understood what they wanted. They just differed in the ways, in the means to their end. But what united them was their effort towards this freedom. Their success was in the strength of relentless action. They won by making the other side give up their efforts for control. Anarchists could stand to learn from this lesson. It matters not the exact detail of your piece of anarchy, but what does matter is the abolition of the ideology that supports the need for a state. This is surely our next step in social evolution. And, there's certainly more work at hand than just dismantling the state, but there has to be a start, and there has to be the few who do so. Only when the first pig escapes do the others follow. Anarchists are generally against the end-all be-all rule of authority, of any authority. So why is it that we somehow want to, in rigid terms, define what it is that makes anarchy applicable or makes it work? What happened to the emergent solutions? Why must we give a total account for how it's going to be laid out now, when evolution and emergence is key to anarchy and key to self-governance? What happened to trial and error? What happened to ideological evolution?